Film Club.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Film Club. I am one of your hosts, Andy Harrison, and with me, as always, it's Andy Donaldson.
Hello.
Every week in Film Club, we invite the people at home along to watch a film with us. We dive into one of cinema's best, and this week, we have invited them to watch one of cinema's best with Yojimbo.
Yojimbo is about a samurai, a ronin, bounty hunter, let's say, someone who's for hire, mercenary for hire. He comes into a town that's plagued by gambling. This town has two rival parties. It has a family and a lieutenant of a family who have gone their separate ways, at war with one another, and the whole town's in disarray because of the gambling and the atrocities and the war and all this. It's just become all a bit glum. So he puts it on himself to wage war, and the villagers can actually have the town back.
So, Yojimbo is one of my absolute favourite films ever. And I think it's because this is what I think of as, quintessential Kurosawa. I've just come off of doing almost a 3-hour straight lecture to some of my students on film. And all I want to do right now is talk about Yojimbo. Because Yojimbo is this perfect marriage of everything. Like, Yojimbo has some of the most stunning direction from Kurosawa that you'll see in any of his work. It's one of his first films to have been shot, if not his first film, I can't quite remember off the top of my head, to be shot in widescreen, to be shot 2.351 rather than 4:3. Obviously, the last, 4:3 film from him that we did was Seven Samurai. And then
No, Rashomon.
No,
you mean in terms of chronological?
Yeah, chronologically. And it marries him up with his longtime collaborator, which is Toshiro Mifune, doing arguably Toshiro Mifune's best performance.
Yeah, mate, honestly, can I just say, this is so good seeing him not as like a kind of crazy character, not as someone who's like got a bit of, like the anti-hero. Well, he was an anti-hero, but do you know what I mean? Someone who's a bit more straight edge, concerned. He's not like always laughing and skeeving and all this kind of stuff. Mate, this was class.
In Seven Samurai, Kikuchiyo he's quite similar in some ways to his character in Rashomon, but here he's very consolidated. He's composed. He's quiet. He's calculated. He's thoughtful.
Calculating so much.
It gives him that iconic Toshiro Mifune quirk with like the sort of the uncomfortable shoulders and the scratching and keeping his arms inside his kimono.
Yeah, I really love that.
It paints him as this Western hero. Obviously, there's this incestual nature between like the Western and the samurai film, and here he's very much like he is the gunslinger coming into town.
I got massive Western vibes off this. Like what better scene than that towards the end when he comes into the town and they got the rival gang facing him, and it's like one man army versus the rest. Got some great. I mean, I imagine one of the things we're going to talk about, at least you talk about more so because you'll know, is the legacy this has on Western films. And it was amazing to see. Like, I'm not really huge in Westerns, so like kind of going back and seeing this and kind of appreciating just where they kind of came from.
Well, the irony is that it doesn't just end here. Yes, like quite infamously, Yojimbo was illegally remade by Sergio Leone for his one of his first films called A Fistful of Dollars. And then the stranger element I always find is that if you go back to this film, back to Kurosawa, it still isn't the origin. Kurosawa has said in many, many interviews that when he was a kid, his dad used to take him to a local American cinema where they would watch John Ford Westerns all the time. So
was John Ford before Kurosawa?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I did not know that.
Was coming out sometime, but yeah.
Oh, man, I didn't know that at all.
So like, Kurosawa was influenced by John Ford, obviously, and then Leone comes in and takes that samurai aesthetic that has been painted already by the Western and brings it back into the West, but from an Italian point of view. It's very interesting. It's very cool.
Yeah, no, it's a nice bit of learning for me today. One thing I loved about this is, as I was going through the film, I think you nailed it there when you were talking about like this. It's polished from Kurosawa's perspective. There's a really good video we always refer back to in Kurosawa, and it's Every Frame of Painting back when he was absolutely smashing it. It was about how he edits and how the scene moves into one another. So I tried to utilize that knowledge, and after watching that video, and you can see it in Seven Samurai, as much as I analyze this film, I got away from my analysis and more into the actual film, thinking, oh my God, this is like fully involved in the actual story. So like credit to Kurosawa, he took my analytical kind of perspective and completely threw in its head and said, yeah, just watch this film and enjoy it, which I bloody well did.
If we're going to mention that video, there's one of the things that Kurosawa does better than almost any filmmaker of his time, and that is that use of movement and weather. And he does it, I think, twofold here. One,
How good is the
he
smoke?
makes... So yeah, there's the famous one, yeah. There's the dust that's kicked up from the ground with all that wind.
So good.
And it adds into one of the things that people have commented on in the past is the elemental nature of this film. You have the wind in that dust. You've got the fire blazing behind.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Silk fire. You've got the water as the sake pours out of the barrels, and then you've also got the fact that his name is taken like from the mulberry fields that come from the earth. I think there's still those elements where I think it's either ingrained in Kurosawa to a degree that he doesn't know that he's doing it, and he just thinks of samurai and the Jedi Geki in that respect, or it's an intentional maneuver to give his characters a more legendary feel.
And I can completely get behind that. He's a master at his craft, Kurosawa.
Yep. And then that final way he adds movement as well is through the sort of the writhing masses of the townsfolk and the two warring families. Like Toshiro Mifune is very composed, he's very still, but they are very skitterish, and especially in some of those fight sequences.
What better scene when Mifune goes up the tower, the runner goes up the tower to the top, he says, I don't want to fight for you anymore, here's your money back. And he watches them wage against each other. One advances, the other retreats, the other advances, the other retreats, and they slowly get closer and closer and closer. Then it comically kind of gets called off. And this film, actually, speaking of comically, it's not afraid to be funny. For as serious a film as it is.
God, it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, like, really, really.
From the outset, the fact that when he first rolls up into town, a dog runs past with a severed hand. And you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
You're like, what's he walking into? And perfectly offset, perfectly sort of framed with the music, that sort of the theme that comes in and out throughout the entire film and is sort of remixed and reused at different times. It has such a jovial bounce to it.
I fucking love the music for this film. It's the use of almost like the clanking, the percussion, the wood, especially like the wood used in the actual soundtrack itself, but there's also the guard that uses the wood to go on about the time, which indirectly goes on to display the fighting that happens. So what we actually find with the music and the sound effects is the use of percussion, the use of drumming instruments. You know, there's a scene towards the end with the silk guy who's kind of gone mad, and he's got that drum, that beating of the drum, which is a great scene. And he eventually goes and kills someone. So it's almost like the percussive elements of this film go on to kind of announce the upcoming fight or scene or violence that's about to come. It's superbly well used. There's one thing that I really enjoyed about this. Now, I wanted to ask you, because you might have a bit more insight about it, is that I really noticed a screen wipe, a very Star Wars, George Lucas-esque screen wipe. Is this because there's influence on, Lucas? Is he like, oh my God, screen wipe? Was that a thing in the 50s? Was what's the crack?
Yeah, so screen wipes were used more commonly back then, but Kurosawa in particular was using them a fair bit. I think George Lucas has typically said he took his inspiration for screen wipes and put them into Star Wars because of, I don't know if he necessarily says all of Kurosawa's work, but he's often cited as taking influence from Hidden Fortress, which is a Kurosawa film which uses quite a lot of screen wipes.
Nice. Cool. Thank you.
The other final thing I want to mention, actually, if we're going to talk about the Western influence, is that there is this sort of deep embedded thematic value of the West sort of encroaching onto Eastern values and how that's embedded in the younger generations. Yeah, the obvious example being the gun, the fact that one of the brothers from one of the warring sort of gangs, rather than using what Kurosawa saw as an honorable weapon, a sword, he instead has chosen a more modern contraption in the form of a gun, and it's his way of, without skill, being able to wield power over people.
And that scene towards the end where he needs his gun, he's like, "Oh, that gun is me. Without it, I am nothing." Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't have any skill at all. You're using an instrument. While
we're on it, that final scene, that final showdown, the final confrontation in the street with, he uses what Leone would go on to sort of popularize later, which is the short, shock, immediate action, where you have a long, lengthy build-up, and the build-up is part of the enjoyment. and then the action just occurs very quickly. We don't spend time like crossing swords and clinging and clanging and shooting and banging for like long periods of time. Instead, it's all about the build up, the action, and then the comeuppance that comes from that.
Yeah, 100% behind it.
Excellent. It is a stunning piece of filmmaking, and it's the sort of film where just watching it the other day and now coming here and talking about it, I'm already set to go and watch it again. Like I would happily sit and watch this film yet again.
I agree. I really do agree. I love this, and it's definitely something that I could just sit down and watch again. It was so fun. I texted you straight after Andy, and I was just like, oh my God, that was amazing.
What an incredible way to start a brand new year of Film Club.
Yep, definitely.
So anyway, there is Yojimbo. You can let us know in the comments below what you thought of Yojimbo, or you can hit Andy and I up on Twitter. But we are going to be back once again next week, where we're taking a recommendation from Damien Beatty himself, because we want to take a look at another samurai film, and Damien has recommended Twilight Samurai.
Nice. Looking forward to that then.
Yeah, me too. So until then, get watching.
Cheers.